Hi, I'm Darcy Scott Martin. I am the Senior Policy Advisor for the National Center for Healthy Housing. We want to thank you for joining us today in our webinar on using earmark funding for healthy housing. We have just a moment to remind you that if you have questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat box, and also that we are recording this. We're hoping that it will have a nice shelf life for next year's appropriations process as people get started applying for their earmarking. I want to introduce the three great panelists we have today, starting with Ruth Norton, President and CEO of the Green and Healthy Housing Initiative. She joined the organization in 1993 and has led its development into one of the nation's most effective and foremost authorities on healthy housing and its impact on social determinants of health and racial equality. Ruth Ann is an expert who's on lead poisoning prevention, healthy homes, and the intersection of climate, energy, and health. She directs GHHI's national strategy, policy framework, and services to integrate climate, healthcare, and healthy housing as a platform for improved health, economic, educational, and social outcomes for low-income communities. She serves on the board of the EPA's Children's Health Protection Advisory Committee, Maryland Clean Energy Center Board of Directors, National Leadership Academy for the Public Health, National Council on State Housing Agencies, National Advisory Group, Ohio Asthma Council, and Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health Center for Population Health Information Technology Advisory Board. She is the chair of the Maryland Lead Poisoning Prevention Commission and is a federally appointed liaison member to the CDC's Lead Exposure and Prevention Advisory Committee. Second, we'll have Jolene Lyon. She's the daughter of Joseph and Ursula Lyon of Nome. She was raised in Nome and graduated from Mount Edgecombe High School. She served 2 years as a light wheel vehicle mechanic in the U.S. Army. She served in her tour in Baumholder, Germany, and was deployed to Bosnia during the peacekeeping mission. Jolene started her career with DECO, Alaska, and has extensive experience in projects, planning, and finance. Additionally, she's served in the oil and gas, aerospace, and military defense. She was raised in both Western and Yupik society and has strong connections to both cultures. Jolene has participated in various Yupik dance groups in Anchorage areas and has often performed with her group throughout Alaska. She earned her undergraduate degree from the University of Alaska, Anchorage, a Bachelor of Science in Sociology, and a minor in anthropology. She's a shareholder of Bering Straits Native Cooperation and a member of the Project Management Intuition and the American Anthropology Association. Our final speaker on the panel will be Lisa Ramsey. She's the Deputy Director of the Turnbull Neighborhood Partnership, a community development corporation that facilitates resident-driven neighborhood revitalization in Warren, Ohio. At TNP, she manages fiscal responsibilities for the organization and develops resources for programming. Ruth Ann, would you like to kick us off?
Sure, and Jolene, let me thank you for your service. I really want to tip my hat on that, and so glad to join you, Darcy and Lisa, and the group. If you want to go to the slides that I have, I want to talk a little bit about how we've been able to capture and utilize congressionally designated spending. So I think you all are running the slides, is that right?
Yep, can you see them?
Yep, yeah. You can keep moving to that next one there, and I'll keep us on pace here. But thank you for the invitation to talk today. If you go to the next slide.
Are you seeing the one that says basics of congressionally directed funding?
I am not yet. So there it is. It's coming up a little slow. Just for the record, I am actually in Puerto Rico, an important part of the United States, for the EPA National Environmental Justice Council meetings here. So I will blame tropic winds for my slow internet. But as we talk about these earmarks, the process has closed for this year. Will be coming up next year. Darcy will talk maybe a little bit more about that. So what we're talking about today is to help everyone think about the work to be done between now and when the window of opportunity opens again next early winter. And I think the basic message here is make sure that in the programs and the ideas and the needs that you have for the funding, congressional directed funding, typically that's filling a gap or setting forward a new program for which there isn't an easy answer through notice of funds availability competition, make sure that you're doing a good job of meeting with your full congressional delegation representing your area. And I want to especially say, both of your senators' offices should know what you're doing because they're looking at statewide designation for the state, and then your congressional representatives. And be able to really articulate the project ideas and so that when they have a release date, you're ready, have done the socialization, the understanding. I encourage people to have folks out to a site visit, meet with you to make sure that you're getting the maximum consideration. There are really good webinars that are put on through the offices, and every office will have a congressional liaison who is really monitoring these applications and putting them in. And in both instances that I'll talk about our funds in a minute that we've gotten pretty substantially less than what we've asked for. Most people have gotten pretty good cuts on this as the offices are trying to meet a lot of needs with limited funding on the designated funding. But making sure that you're also really up to speed on the HUD economic development systems, and the systems that you'll be using on reporting are different for organizations like ours who are used to using ELOCs. We're using DRG, our systems. It is a little bit different rules that come into play. And if you have a particular HUD office or EPA office or CDC office that you may be working with, you want to make sure they know you're also applying, because they can be helpful in working with, for example, the HUD people that we're working with are not the Office of Healthy Homes, and making sure they understand that. And I think also key to this is develop your proposal in consultation with your congressional liaisons. Short applications, tight on budget, and definitely showing that you have community support at all levels, and that you can demonstrate through data, mapping, and other tools, as well as hearing from the community the need that you are addressing and the authentic need in community to want this work to move forward. That's going to be very important in the decision process. So next slide, please. Tell me when you see it and I can start.
We can see everything.
Okay, it'll come later for me. But you want to make sure to understand that in the end, the delegation and the senator and the senators and the Congress people are going to determine which projects to support at what level of funding. And this is why that demonstrating the evidence, the need, and the community support, and also local jurisdiction support, really important to hear, for them to hear. Know that if you don't get 100% of what you ask for, you are going to have to adjust your budget, working with the assigned project officer, and justify how you've done that reduction and how you're still going to achieve the major goals of the program, maybe at smaller scale initially, but keeping that moving forward. That was especially important to us as we went for a second set aside, a second earmark, is to augment and stay on course. And then there is a process by which this will have a preliminary approval, then it will go to the committees, reviews. So it is going through much like legislation and funding goes through normally. It then gets assigned to your federal department. For example, at HUD, it's the EDI or the Community Project Fund. You'll get a notice of award from both your congressional representative and the agency, and you'll commence on negotiations, getting set up for project design. And I would say that this, in the first year that we got it, when they had first reopened congressional funding, it was a little slower. It is now much quicker on the second time around on that. And the negotiations have been pretty straightforward to be in line with the guidelines set up by the assigned department. Sign the grant agreement, and for us, doing the environmental review process and proceeding. Pretty straightforward if you've done federal grant making and awards before, but a little different in the personnel you're likely to deal with, and a real need up front to do the right promotion on your project, not just the application. So an opportunity to really talk, discuss, and socialize your program through the process. Do we have the next slide?
It's up.
Change.
Okay, well, so we have been very fortunate with the support of Ben Cardin and Chris Van Hollen, our two U.S. senators, and Kwesi and Fume, our congressman in the district in Baltimore, to receive $1.75 million in CPF CDS awards. Our work is aligning with a much larger goal of doing a holistic whole house approach in Baltimore that will do lead paint removal, asthma reduction, trip and fall, and weatherization, decarbonization, and electrification, and we're including in that also solar. And we're taking this whole house approach as a health measure for our community and as a measure as community revitalization to improve the outcomes. So we are really falling under all of the rules on lead and healthy housing and the weatherization energy efficiency work together, and looking to build that as another part of our work is, sorry, somebody's knocking on the door for my hotel room, but to build that work to also increase workforce development and jobs in our targeted community in East Baltimore. So our baseline is that we're going to do 1,000 homes. We have accumulated about $18 million from philanthropy, from HUD, from other federal, state, and local agencies to include this work. And it's a major part of our proof and concept of the health benefits of lowering carbon emissions, advancing electrification, for our goals to also, and I don't know if it's on the next slide, but our goals also to improve intergenerational wealth transfer by improving the value of housing, improve the ability of kids to get to school healthy and ready to learn, and to care for our older adults. But it is a full approach on holistic healthy housing that we're able to do, and this critical dollars allowed us to leverage lots of money coming from our legislature, from our state, and other places because of the congressional support. So that's also a very important part of this in laying that linchpin ability to use these funds to build something that is also sustainable over time, because it's helping us establish, for example, healthcare reimbursement into our work, and funds from Empower, our utility programs, and others. So I'll stop there. I think I actually have one more slide, right? Or two more slides, sorry about that. If you want to move to those, and it'll tell you a little bit about who is funding this and what we're doing with it.
Change to the next slide.
Okay, so you can see there we have everything from HUD to we're using ARPA dollars, CDBG dollars, Affordable Housing Trust dollars, Maryland Energy Administration, money from our state housing agency, our Department of Health. For regional catalyst asthma grants, we also work with CHIP funding in Maryland. And we have support from foundations like Weinberg and O'Neill, as well as direct healthcare funding from WellPoint, that many people may have known previously as AmeriGroup, as part of their social determinants of health investment, where Michael McKnight, who's on the call here with us, and I were talking with other healthcare entities this morning about the significant savings and return that this work is delivering back to healthcare. So if you go to the next slide, really what we're also modeling this for our city, our state, and across the nation is how the aligned braid coordinate approach works. Increasing the efficiencies, lowering the wear, tear, and drag on families to have an integrated stream of delivery and be able to really build out the outcomes we want. You've seen this also getting modeled out in legislation through the Pennsylvania Whole House Repair Program, where we're working in New Jersey with the Board of Public Utilities to also take a whole house approach, and the program that we are helping to build out with the city of Milwaukee, where we're making that connection intersection on funding on toxics, lead, carbon emissions, and things like asthma triggers, structural defects, and pursuing the workforce development and the Justice 40 initiatives to not only create jobs in communities that deliver back money, but create ownership. And so in all of this, we have an advisory group in Baltimore coming from the community, especially around the issues of electrification and decarbonization, socializing those issues, understanding them, what it will mean, getting over fears to move off of gas onto the electric grid. And then we're incorporating all of these lessons into all of our work, including also the Detroit Home Repair Program that also takes a very braided approach. So let's go to this next slide as we think about how we're using IRA, Inflation Reduction Act, and Infrastructure and Jobs Act money as well to help us advance, I think, a key part of the frontier on healthy housing, which is climate justice and using those dollars for restorative health and justice in housing. So we are really also building the platform and the evidence in Baltimore as we move to advance electrification standards, certainly in Maryland and beyond, but to also advocate with evidence for zero emission standards on appliances as we move off of carbon emitting appliances, water heaters, stoves, et cetera, to a more electrified future. The focus for this coming out of this program and where we're focusing on those climate goals are in California, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Maryland for now, but we'll be building that also into our programs in Rhode Island and Tennessee, Detroit, Mississippi, and others. And we're going to be looking at many impacts, right? Housing stability, mental health, school attendance, work attendance, but those core health outcomes and those other non-energy benefits and now non-climate dollar benefits that are so key. And never before has things like lead and healthy housing been so crucial to the success of the billions of dollars coming from the federal government. And I'll just close to say that when they announced the $20 billion in greenhouse gas emissions dollars in Baltimore, speaker after speaker after speaker, including the vice president, talked about the role of healthy housing in advancing this work. So we're really appreciative that Congress is looking at specialized projects and being able to put in that leverage linchpin money, and appreciative to Darcy and Sarah and the Center for highlighting this. And I look forward to hearing from our other panelists and answering your questions.
I think my camera is backwards. That's fine. So folks, I just want to now introduce Jolene Lyon, who from NOM.
I think you're muted, Jolene. You're still muted.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Trying to figure out all these electronics. Good morning. My name is Jolene Lyon, President CEO of Bering Straits Regional Housing Authority in Nome, Alaska. and I would like to talk about our Teller project and how we use the 2022 Congressionally Directed Spending that we received. Next slide, please. So just a little bit about Bering Straits Regional Housing Authority. So we represent 18 tribes. We have 17 communities in the Bering Straits region on the western coast of Alaska. We count our Native Corporation, Bering Straits Native Corporation, as one of our tribes, making it 18 total tribally tribes that we represent. And we've been in service since between 1971 is when the TDHEs was established, but it wasn't really implemented until 1974. And so we serve all these tribes within the region, and we provide clean, safe, affordable housing for Alaska Natives and our Alaska Natives and American Indians in our region. We also have market rent units that we offer to our communities. I'll continue going. Thank you. Next slide. So a little bit about the earmark spending that we received. So Lisa Murkowski, our senator, came to Nome and sat down with the leaders of our region, and she asked, what is it that we need? What will help the community? And in every entity, in the topics that they discussed, they said we need housing, whether it's we need teacher housing, we need law enforcement housing, we need housing for the Deepwater port that's coming up, we need housing for our locals who live in the community, for our first responders, for our doctors and nurses. So housing was definitely on her top list. And in that conversation we had with her, we really pushed Senator Murkowski, because our organization receives on annual about $6.5 million, which is not enough, and that includes our operating costs. So we said we need additional funding, and Senator Murkowski gave us what we had asked for. We kept our project feasible, just like Ruth Ann was talking about. Talk to your senator. Talk about what you could do and what's reasonable and feasible to do with your projects, and that you could attain them. So we asked for $5.1 million to help relocate about 32 homes. I'm getting ahead of myself here. $5.1 million in April of last year. And then we received notification that we would receive the funds in early spring of 2023. Our project plan is to improve the lives of our Native people in the community of Teller, Alaska. And like I was saying, we're looking at relocating 32 homes. What we want to do is we want to continue to have the community thrive, but at the same time, we want to protect the assets of the housing authority. And so that's what our project is to relocate and to build additional homes that we had planned. Our project right now is in the RFP process. We're looking to start the dirt work mid-August, and this is going to lay out a complete foundation pad for the relocation of our project. So Teller, Alaska, small community, about 250 people, 73 homes in the area. It's very remote. It is accessible by road in the summertime, although it is a very bumpy road, and there are some dangerous spots on there. But it is a community that lives in poverty. There's not a lot of income there. It's a very old community right on the coast, and it's the situation with this is that Teller had already relocated their community, not necessarily relocated, but when they started building new homes, they built them in a place outside of their old site. So I'm going to show you a map here on the next slide, please. So here, where you see the little pin drop there at Teller, right there on the pit there on the coast, right there on the sand spit, that's the old community. And a lot of the homes in this area are the original site, facing flooding, facing erosion, facing permafrost issues. And if you go over to the right side of the screen, right there near the water, you'll see a small community right where the road starts to bend. I would say about 4 inches up from the bottom on the bottom right. There's Coyote Creek. That's where the community decided that when they were going to build other homes, they were going to move here. Well, as we rotate our construction for new construction in the 17 communities, where we were looking to explore where we can build 4 new homes for Teller. In our investigation, building in the old community was out of the question. It is in a flood zone. It would never pass an environmental review. Plus the permafrost issues. Looking at Coyote Creek over on the right-hand side up in the middle of the photo there, that as well is a bad location. The egresses between the homes is no more than, it's got to be about less than 10 feet between each home. The roads themselves are very narrow. You can only get 1 vehicle through them. This would be a very poor place to build. In addition, the homes there are also facing permafrost issues, and they are sinking into the ground as they are in the old site. So when we went and did exploratory for a new site, down here on the lower right hand corner where you see the white square plus the X on it, that is in an elevation that is on rock. We had explored the area doing geothermal geothermal drilling. We did find some permafrost closer to the road, but as for the most part, this site here is going to provide longevity for the community and protect the assets of the housing authorities. The new construction of 8 homes that we plan on building. We're also going to be using this $5.1 million earmark funds to relocate every home in that Coyote Creek location onto this site over here to reinforce the community and keeping them united. You could see here in the middle of the slot, in the middle of the photo on the lower, in the center, that long strip there, that's the airport. And we were actually quite lucky to not have any kind of environmental issues with the FAA on where we plan on building this new site. Next slide, please. So here is a plat that we had designed for what this site location is going to look like, and this is a really good close-up of that X marks the spot picture. Having a well planned out, well thought out road system and development, room for growth. Our thought is that Teller has, of course, the indigenous families who grew up there, who are from there. They're probably never going to leave the community. The likelihood that this community is going to grow beyond what already exists there is not very big. So the lot and the pad itself is going to house well over about 40 some homes in this area. But our thought is that we're going to provide a new development for the 32 homes in Coyote Creek, plus the 8 homes, and possibly any additional homes that are down in the old site by the sandspit up here onto this location to again keep the community intact as much as possible. Next slide, please. All right, so how did we do this? So as a housing authority, we are obligated to work with our stakeholders and receive their buy-in. It's a huge undertaking to already build in a community where everyone is so united. It's a completely other adventure or challenge to ask a community to completely relocate. And we had to have several conversations individually and then as a group to receive the buy-in first from our tribe. We answer to the tribe. We answer to the president and the council of the tribes. And in having that first initial conversation, when we were doing exploratory for where we were going to build new homes, we could not find any location other than the spot just outside of the original community. We would never pass an environmental review to build in the old community. It would be challenging to build in Coyote Creek, and so we had to put together our pitch to the Native corporation, to the tribe first. This is why we should build here. These are the reasons why. Here's the pros and here's the cons, but the cons can all be worked out over time. After we received buy-in from the tribe, we then went to the Native corporation. The Native corporation owns the land, and so if we don't have buy-in from the Native corporation, our plan is completely, it's a moot point to even move forward. But in explaining to them that we have the support of the tribe, we have the support, of the community, we have the support of our board and our team, who are the builders, who are the experts in building and why we should build there. We received buy-in from the Native corporation, and then we worked to receive buy-in from the city because they're outside of the utilities of power. Teller doesn't have running water, or they don't have any sewer, but we're working with NSHHC, Alaska Native Tribal Health Consortium, on getting that developed. And there's no better place in the area to put water and sewer, and this would be the great place. This would be a great starting point. The reason why we're doing this is that the entire Bering Straits region is facing permafrost issues. So, for example, in the community of Brevignition, which is just right across the water from Teller, what was once a home that was built to environmental standards, 6 feet off of the ground, where we're on piles or we're on blocks, you could walk underneath the house. Today, it is less than 3 feet off of the ground, and you have to crawl to get underneath the home. That is how fast homes within the past 10 to 15 years have been sinking. And it is becoming more and more of a state concern because the Housing Authority can no longer maintain the management of continuing to put dirt in a place where the earth is just continuing to sink. And so for the protection of our assets, of the new homes that we plan on construction, for the protection and preservation of the homes that exist there, this is why we want to relocate the community. And we had just recently, the Housing Authority hosted a road trip from Nome to Teller with a different number of stakeholders from other presidents of other housing authorities in the state. We had a HUD representative. We also had the representative from Lisa Murkowski's office come, and we showed them, we said, this is where we're going to build. This is why we're going to build, and showed them the old site, showed them Coyote Creek, and explained to them, this is our plan to move forward and why we want to build it. We want to keep the community as close to its original site as possible because these people who are from the community, they belong to the land. You might have heard that, we own the land. No, in this case, the land owns the people. They are the most familiar with the area. They know everything about the water, the rock, all the plants and the animals that are in the area. And so to remove them completely from their original surroundings would be detrimental, not just to the community itself, but to the culture of their society that they are familiar with. Next slide, please. I believe that might have been it. Yep, that was my last slide. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Darlene. I think next we were going to go to Lisa.
Good morning. Well, it's good afternoon for some of us. Good morning for you in the morning. Yeah, I'll keep ours pretty straightforward because it was a very, very straightforward project and process for us. But to set a little bit of context, so my name is Lisa Ramsey. I work for Trumbull Neighborhood Partnership. We're a community development corporation. We serve Trumbull County, which is in Ohio, right in between Pittsburgh and Cleveland, if you're familiar with that part of the country. Our county sits at about 200,000 people, and our county seat, Warren, sits at just under 40,000. So depending on what type of community you come from, that's either very small or a moderate sized community. But ours is very much a Rust Belt story, post-industrial, lots of disinvestments, aging housing stock, a lot of issues with an aging population in inaccessible types of housing. So we have been working for the past, I'd say 12 years in doing a whole variety of work, but housing is a large component of what we do in our community. And just as like a brief summary, so our project was a fiscal year 2023 project. It was for emergency home repair, and our supporting senator for this in Ohio was Sherrod Brown. So go ahead and move to the next slide, please. Just as a kind of high level process on the way that ours went, our senator made an announcement in April of last year that this was going to be an opportunity that was coming up. We have done in the past, in different reiterations of it, we've done earmark projects. Those have been different application process. It's changed every few years or so, depending on what's going on with Congress. But this most recent form was announced in April of 2022 by Senator Brown's office. And honestly, it was an incredibly quick timeline. So April 4th is when it was announced. April 17th was when the applications were due. And so it was a very wild couple of weeks as we worked through everything we needed. But kind of the theme that you've heard throughout all of this, and I'll just emphasize again, is that being prepared was the most important part. So you know it's coming. Now we know it's coming. It's a fairly regular opportunity at this point. And so having a lot of the legwork established ahead of time made it possible that we were able to submit successfully on time. So the initial announcement was made in April. We immediately got to preparing the application, gathering our letters of support, drafting final budgets. There were a number of webinars that were incredibly helpful for us to participate in, and we were able to ask Senator Brown's office a lot of questions, which was great, just kind of having them help us navigate some of the like higher level federal lingo. We have some experience with federal grants, but I think you want to make sure you're applying appropriately and you are understanding all of that jargon that accompanies those applications. We submitted our application, like I said, in mid-April. And our office, Senator Brown's office, was excellent at keeping us kind of just updated as it was going through, letting us know your project's still in the mix, your project's still being considered. We received regular communication from their office, which was super helpful because sometimes you submit the application to funders and it goes dead silent. So it was nice to know that we were still in the mix as we went along. And then we received our official announcement in January of 2023. And so far, this is our first year doing it under this process. And I would say for those of you that haven't done it before, there's been excellent communication. There have been webinars that have been incredibly helpful. The grant analysts assigned have been very useful in, they're responsive, they're clear. You know exactly what's expected of you. There's checklists, which if you're a grant administrator, it's always great to have a checklist because then you know what you need to do and what's expected of you. So the process may appear intimidating, especially with the very quick turnaround time for the application to go in, but it actually has been pretty smooth to navigate through. Our project hasn't not started yet because we're currently going through the public environmental review process. We are a nonprofit, so we are not a local government unit. So our county office is the one actually leading the initial phases of the environmental review. So we've been working with them closely to get that environmental review phase 1 completed so that we could start with our project, which leads me to our project, which is on the next slide. So we applied for emergency home repair, very straightforward proposal. We've been doing emergency home repairs for about a decade now in our community. As I described before, it's a very low income community. In our urban areas, the annual household income is less than 28,000. Over 75% of our properties in the entire county have been constructed before 1975. So we have a lot of very aged property. We have been on an economic decline since 1975 as well. So investment has not been there. New houses, very rare to be constructed in our urban communities. I think our county seat has had maybe one house constructed in the last 15 years. So we're looking at what do we do with the existing housing stock that we have. We have an aging community as well, so a lot of it is not very accessible because we're dealing with the typical Midwestern floor plan. There's a half bath on the first floor if you're lucky, but the main bath, the primary bedrooms, everything's on the second floor. So there's a lot of those issues within our housing stock and a lot of need as well. We found that our existing home repair resources, which include CHIP, CDBG, HUD home funds, a few other Ohio specific funds as well. Those are generally limited for lower income individuals, 50% or lower. The funds that are available for 80% to 50% AMI are very limited. We receive less than $100,000 in our county from home and CHIP to be able to take care of emergency home repair type projects. So we have a massive wait list, over 200 at this point. We know we have a problem, and that's a gap we had identified. So that's probably one of the most important things I would recommend is knowing your programming very well, knowing where your gaps are at, so that when an opportunity kind of pops out like this, you're prepared to go after the resource kind of at a moment's notice. So we knew a large gap in our funding was 50% to 80% AMI households. So basically locally that works out to like our working poor households. Everybody 50% or lower tends, as this is a sweeping generalization, but tends to be a Social Security type of household. So we were looking for resources that could help individuals in that other gap. In addition to that, we have had a workforce development program for the last 5 years that has brought in low-income residents from our community, train them. They come in training first on mowing, landscaping tasks, and then they're slowly trained into more skilled types of positions. So you can see some of our crew members putting together porch stairs for one of our accessibility projects. So when we made our application, we actually requested $1 million. And that would have allowed us to do both emergency home repair, so it would take care of the accessibility or emergency issue in the household, but also allow us to pay and train some of our crew members that are working through this program that was training them on these types of skill sets. So we actually were awarded $750,000, which will allow us, we're projecting to complete about 100 units, give or take the cost of the projects. We have limits on what we will put into each unit and whatnot, but that's gonna go a long way to help us when we couple that with the existing funding that we have to fill that gap for those households that are above 50% but below 80% AMI. And really the two things that I think are most important that made this application successful, one, knowing the gaps in our programming. So having that ready all the way down to like a draft budget on hand that just needed to be tweaked depending on what type of funding came through and what it could be used for. So that one's huge. Knowing within that same budget too, that a lot of these opportunities they need to be scalable. So, we applied for $1 million, we received 750. That allowed us we just scaled back the project, the number of units. And I found that to be incredibly common in some of these types of funding resources where the funder just says, oh, you asked for that, how about this instead? So needing to be prepared to try to make it work without the full request that you had. So always over ask. That might not be a popular opinion for everybody, but we tend to always over ask just in case. So I have the lofty budget and then the realistic one in the back of my mind as well. And the second thing really is just making sure that you have a very strong network within your community. So sharing what you're doing on a regular basis with community partners, that allows you very easily to be able to say, hey, I need a letter of support, like in 2 days. And so the stronger that network around you is, the better position you will be for these types of application. And then also keeping in direct communication with your local elected officials at all levels of government, because they are the ones that are going to help advocate for you. They're the ones that are going to help guide you through these process that you have to go through. So we've made sure on a semi-regular basis to just call and say, hey, can we meet? Can we, even if it's with just the liaison, can we meet and talk and share about what we're doing and share about the issues that we're noticing? And that's been very powerful in being able to get our projects through, because then our local officials, they know how to advocate for what we need. They know what we're doing. They know who we are, especially if it's your first run through the funding, if it's your first attempt to make an application. Making sure that your reputation is established with them because you've been in contact with them is super helpful in general as well. So yeah, that would be the really kind of the key points that I think were important that allowed us to be successful, knowing what you need so that you're ready, and then making sure that the local officials around you also know what you need so that you're ready. So we're never afraid to preach repeatedly, hey, we need this. Also, we still need this, and that's been very helpful for us. So we're excited to get this one up and running, and we're also we made another application, because why not give it a try to expand our jobs creation program underneath this last fiscal cycle as well. But yeah, that's kind of a summary of what we've got going on. Be happy to answer any questions or keep us going.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And also thank you, Ruth Ann and Jolene. There were fabulous presentations on all sides. I have a few questions that I will bring up at the beginning as the ability to use the prerogative as the moderator. And then I also want to remind people, if you would like to ask more questions, please type them in the chat. So one of the things I'd like to ask all of y'all is, number one, what did you wish you knew when you started the process? And number two, was there anything unexpected about the process that kind of came out of nowhere that you wished you'd been more prepared for? Do you want to start, Ruth Ann?
Sure. I just want to say, I thought, but first of all, both presentations by Jolene and Lisa were so great. So thank you. But at I think the big piece, right, is understanding your gap, but also understanding a little bit more how much you might have to adjust accordingly. And then if you're looking at a second iteration, it does have to have unique standalone value, can't be just an extension of the base project. So you have to be able to define that project in ways that it's sort of like the next generation takes you to some other things. So really understanding what has to be effectively defended in Congress by your representatives, how they're approaching it. I wouldn't say surprising. It's all been an iterative learning process here on how this differs in some degree than other federal programs. And again, just that how strong it matters that you're able to show the authentic need, the demonstrated support, and how it relates to the sustainability and connection to other groups, because they're trying to build, effectively give some venture capital money to things that should go forward, should scale, but they're giving us the starter piece to some of that.
Jolene? Oh, we can't hear you, Jolene.
Okay, thank you. That was great, Sam. Thank you. And I agree with everything that she had just said. I thought that our process through this grant in receiving it, we actually we actually hold our breath for quite a while, quite some time to wonder if we're even going to get the grant, and what would it look like if we didn't receive the grant, and this is what we can do, because that's all we can do is go with what we have. And I feel like we did very well on this grant, considering that we received the funds. I think we showed what the need was. We were very clear in our objective and how we were going to execute on that. If I could have done it again, I would have asked for more funds, but I don't know if there is a threshold in the process of you keep asking for more, because we could build houses all day long. I just did an analysis. If I had $168 million, I could build almost 500 homes today if I had that kind of money. But we have to do what's feasible. We have to do what's realistic in what we can achieve, and we fill the need, and that's what we do with the grants, and we become successful by being able to fill that, and then we show our grant, the distributors of the grant, that we can accomplish what we say we're going to do. And hopefully we will receive more funding in the future, maybe on different programs, or we start building that relationship with our grant, the providers of the grant. And so I felt like we did everything right, and everything just fell right into place. And having advocates in other arenas, whether it's in other construction, whether it's in social services or healthcare, even the political politicians, the local governments, backing us up by saying we need housing. We all say the same thing, and we have unity. So I don't think that I would change anything, but I might ask for a little bit more money. But again, we do what we can accomplish and be successful in, and then we shine, and then we go back and we can ask for more money. That's where I would go.
Well, Jolene, I think you're spot on, and I think Ruth Ann would concur about the proven track record, because once you already have a successful project that you have achieved in this model, the more likely they are to trust you with more money next time. Lisa, did you want to respond as well?
I mean, I don't have a lot to add to that. I'll say we lucked into the first application that we made because we were very aware of what the gaps were. We were coming out of COVID. We knew home repair is a massive issue. We had done some analysis on it, and we were ready to roll. That was lucky, because when we realized that we had like 2 weeks tops to turn an application around, I knew how much trouble we could have been in. So when we were looking to make an application for like an expanded, almost separate project in our organization for the next year, we had plenty of time to plan for that. But I would not have known that, and we would have probably missed the mark completely the first time around had we not just been in the right place at the right time, thinking the right things, because 2 weeks is real fast.
But Lisa, I think that really speaks to the point of getting to know your members of Congress and knowing the community, so that, as Ruth Ann had mentioned previously as well, this isn't the first time they've ever heard of this situation when you go in for the application, but having those long-term communications, site visits, people engaged in your space is really going to lift up your success rate as well. Do any of you all, I see we're getting to the end of the hour here, and I don't see any questions in the chat box, but does anyone have anything they'd like to add that they came up in their mind because of the other conversations the other folks had, or something you'd just like to highlight to the group?
I think I think these are very important funds that are given to senators and congressional leaders, that they can invest in their communities directly. And so I hope that we're able to keep this program moving forward. So it's something, the program itself, for the benefit of so many different things across the country. I mean, I look at what has been given out in Maryland, and it's been, I think, very thoughtful. It also grounds your congressional leadership in the community-based work that is so needed and so necessary, and they can follow through on things that they ran on and that they got elected for. And but this is as you know, Darcy, a program that kind of lives in on the edge of getting pulled back again. So being cognizant of that, supporting that generally at a higher level. And then I think the advice here has been pretty consistent about talk to your congressional delegation early, often, invite them to come and see the work firsthand, make sure that you get to know the staff, not just the principal. In the offices, that's also key, people who are helping the principals make decisions. And it is the gap funding that is needed, but really good documented evidence about how effective these funds are will help to benefit not only our own programs, but others who need and will apply. And the last thing I'll say is there's groups in each of our communities that need help, capacity building, and connection. Let's connect others to this opportunity and help them get it as we build capacity across our communities.
And also to speak to the discussion about the timeline, Congress sets the block of time that this application process can happen, and then individual offices also identify the time that they would like to receive those applications in. And it's a very tight window that definitely has a closing date. So starting early at the beginning of the year with the offices reaching out to say, so what do you think the calendar is going to look like? And being in communication so that that office knows to send you the link. It's something you put into a portal that the office contains, and they know to send you the link because you've already been in communication about it, will increase the likelihood of you being at the right place at the right time exponentially. Okay, well, folks, I want to thank you for giving us almost an hour of your time. We have recorded this, and so for those of you who watched this and thought it was informative, you'll be able to get a copy of it and distribute it around in your community and with other coalition members that you talk to regularly. We will also continue to promote it at the beginning of next year when this timeline really gets going so that folks are reminded of some of these important topics. And thank you to all of our speakers. It was so great to have you here. And we hope that everyone has learned something from this.
Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.